Thank you very much, John. Very good morning to all of you. What a good-looking crowd. All right, you're well attired, and I love this format because it allows for interaction. So what I'm going to do this morning is rather simple. I actually coined this title for Timothy because he said, "What would you like to call this first session?" And I said, "I'm still trying to get an understanding." So John set it up correctly for us. I'm trying to make a little vision of what this looked like at this point in time. Do I have all the answers? I don't. All right, and so I'm going to pitch this from an understanding what the crisis means for Asia, and we're going to have a series of questions, and hopefully by the end of this whole discussion, we might have some vision of what the future will look like. So I do apologize that one or two of the slides were just updated the night before. So we were waiting for current numbers, and you may not have the most updated slide in front of you. But you could always jot down the numbers as we go along. John mentioned that where exactly do I put the finger on when the crisis has commenced? And I actually say we need to go back a year and a half ago. And the official report of when the crisis actually hit us was when did the recession begin in the United States. So I'm going to go back to that as the first question. How did it come about? I kind of like the idea that we are going back to basics, because did we get over-leveraged? How did this huge credit burden get onto this world? And what happens? This particular recession was unlike the Asian currency crisis in many ways. It was a balance sheet recession. And in a little while, I'll try and provide some example of what I mean by that. I titled this A Crisis of Confidence because I think we are driven by psychology in today's market. I think we had a lot of fear. And fear as a psychological factor changes our risk profile. So the title of this whole conference is about market intelligence and managing risk. I think we are in a stage right now of a lot of uncertainty. 2 nights ago, Dow went up 190 points. Last night, Dow went down 170 points. So we are going to see huge swings in pricing, in volatility. So what does that capture about the mood on the market? We are no longer in a fear mode, but we are not yet hoping for a good times ahead mode. So what do we have? We have uncertainty, tremendous uncertainty. What does it imply for all of us in the Asian agricultural trade? I don't have the answers. But throughout the next 2 days of the conversation, we might arrive at some risk management strategies in view of the huge swings in uncertainty. Why is Asia not spared? Everyone, when we first heard the news about Lehman, about Bear Stearns, about Merrill, about AIG, it seemed like an American problem. Sorry. All right, there's no decoupling. At the end of today's slides, I hope to show to you that we are in this together, not just because of trade flows, but because of capital flows. We are actually in the same boat. Bapak Bambang mentioned that Indonesia is resilient. I do agree. The data shows that there are a couple of Asian countries with domestic consumption, and they are surviving this crisis a lot better. Singapore is not that resilient. Right? And I think the data points to that too. You will see it in a little while. So what have we learned at this point in time? There are a couple of things which I'm sharing, my views, and I'm of course very much open to a conversation with all of you, and what will it be like the way forward. I was allowed a little bit of a commercial pitch at the end, so I'm going to share a little bit about what ITI is. I have one of my colleagues from Singapore here. Jean, can you stand up so that people know who you are? That's Miss Jean Chia. She's one of my team members from the Institute. So I think in a little while, we'll love to have you go up to Jean and say what are the academic courses that you offer under the ITI platform. When exactly can I put a finger on the recession? The official declaration of the recession coming out from the Commerce Department in the United States was actually 4th quarter 2007. Hey, that's not right, you go. All right, 4th quarter 2007, we were still in good times. All right, I don't know when you had your meeting then, that year, for your ASA, but fourth quarter 2007, didn't the stock market go to all-time highs? Were not oil prices at all-time highs on the pathway? Yes. All right, but actually, prices of housing mortgages, prices of the durable goods sector were starting to show a weakness. Okay, but the backdrop was we were all driven by a euphoria in commodity prices, especially in oil. So oil was jumping up from about 73 USD per barrel in 2007 to close to 147. So I put it at 146, but it touches 147 at one point. And that whole year was like crazy because everybody was talking about, all right, unbelievable inflation rates. And Vietnam was struggling with this concept of what do we do with high oil prices. So governments all around were just concentrating on the commodity prices at that point in time. Now if you look at the data, actually sometime in mid-2007, housing prices were starting to weaken. And it took place not just in the United States, we were seeing the softening of housing prices in UK, in Spain. Barcelona won against Man U last night. Distraction down there, okay? And so the housing bubble itself actually was showing weak signs as far back as mid-2006. But the radar wasn't keeping that in mind. Then of course, the biggie, the real biggie was, as John said earlier, financial markets collapsed, and that became like news all over the world. So we kept our eyes only on the radar when we saw the financial markets collapse. But I want to take you back that the signs were there. And your conversation this next 2 days is about market intelligence. I think one of the things that we are all struggling at is we get too much information. A lot of noise, and we are all wired up, and we have our Blackberries and our phones and our televisions and our media. So the noise factor is very high. So what do you look at? How do you know when is it intelligent news coming up from the market? So how did it come about, really? I know I have a slide that says who is to blame. But the dominoes that you saw hitting the market, all of us say it started with financial market developments. So of course the players in the financial markets, they have to carry a lot of the blame. What happens was mortgages were made. They were decent, right things to do. People need to buy housing, you go to a bank, the bank make loans. So that is a fundamental, nothing wrong with that. The interesting thing is we have a lot of top intelligent people going into the financial sector. So all those quant finance people with PhD in physics and mathematics, they were very attracted to the financial sector. So what gets going in many of those financial sector quant finance departments were innovations. We said nothing wrong with innovation. We promote innovation in engineering, we promote innovation in logistics. Why can't you promote innovation in the financial sector? So what do? We need to get a lot of these loans on the balance sheet of the banks out to the market. So it's called the process of securitization. So many of those mortgages were therefore packaged into something which has great names, mini bonds, all right, wonderful names, and nobody really knows what's behind them, but they were diced, sliced, and then marketed to high net worth individuals and to hedge funds. And interestingly, it also ended up in the pockets of the men industry. Okay, so where did this problem come about? Well, what happens is underlying all those CDOs, and they are called credit default obligations, all right,